Hello, welcome back, Fred in the Shed, and a review of one of these little 106-in-1 game handheld consoles. Now, in the title, I did say that this review is reviewed like your dad. And that's because I'm a little bit older than a lot of the sort of guys doing these reviews on YouTube. So this is going to be an in-depth review. A lot of that you probably won't be interested in. Certainly if you're probably under 30, you aren't interested at this sort of price level. You just maybe want to see how this console sort of plays games and the quality of the screen and stuff like that. So what I'll do to save you all that is that just popping up now in the corner of the screen here, I will put a little time, and if you want to sort of scrub forward and go to that time on the video, you will see the thing in action, and we'll go into a bit more details about the games. But if you are perhaps a little bit older, or you're just a regular subscriber and you're used to me rambling on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into sort of a little bit more detail about the unit itself. They are very, very cheap, of course, but you know, you do want sort of value for money, and you want to know that it's going to last. So we'll be looking at it a little bit more closely. So yep, stick with me for that. But I say the rest of you people, you might just want to sort of shoot off and just get straight on to the games. Okay, you still with me? hopefully the regular Fred guys are with me. Right, just, you know, quick look in the box. It doesn't even, this hasn't even got a brand name. It's just a generic sort of games console. There are a lot of these on eBay and on Amazon. I chose this one in particular because it has a small little review screen there with the list of the games. I know you can't see that very well under this light, but as you scroll through the games, this one has a little review screen, and that is quite useful because, as we'll get onto in a bit more detail when we look at the games, a lot of these games on some of these consoles can be repeated. You often get fill-in games as well, you know, games that are in sort of Chinese that are of no real practical use. So having that little screen on the sort of left hand side there just gives you that little bit of insight, just gives you an idea what the game is. And sometimes you'll recognise the format of the game and you'll find that they've listed it under a different name. That is quite popular as well, to get around the sort of copyright issue when they load the ROMs on the device. Right, just have a quick look what we get in the box. I mean, you don't get sort of a lot really. You just get a basic sort of charging lead. This does have a built-in lithium-ion battery that we'll have a look in a moment, and that is a good thing. Otherwise you can end up sort of spending a lot of money on sort of double or treble A batteries. So you get just a basic USB charging lead as you would expect, and also get a video lead that allows you to plug this into a TV, any TV with an AV sort of socket. Some of these new TVs probably might not have that. It's not USB, it has to go into the AV video in, but that's quite useful. This allows the sort of console there to play the games on a larger screen. There is a sort of a setback on this, if you like. It's not perfect, and I say stick with the video and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. The first thing that you obviously want to know about is the screen. 2.8 inches TFT, not a bad size. Some of the games, as you'll see when I do the games a little bit later, they do appear rather small in the screen itself, but you know, overall the quality of the screen is rather good. It's pretty sharp. Colours perhaps a little bit washed out. You know, a little bit of more contrast would have been nice maybe, but you know, for the money that these things sell for, no real criticism of the screen itself. Buttons and the controls, you've got the sort of directional pad here, and yeah, it's actually really responsive, and it actually feels quite nice as well. It feels quite sort of precise, quite linear, you know, not sort of clicky and sort of nasty. And also the sort of activation buttons that we've got here, yeah, once again, you know, these actually feel really good. I mean, much better than you'd expect for something that costs less than sort of £20. Got a couple of sub buttons down the bottom here just for sort of the select and the start, and then you've got the reset button. Now, one thing that I'm not really all that keen about, every time you press the reset button, it goes right back to the sort of startup menu there. I choose sort of English, and it takes you right back to sort of the main menu. It would be nice if it maybe went back one step, especially there is 168 games, so you might be sort of well into the sort of menu here. Yeah, that's a bit of a shame. Just sort of looking around the unit, on the sort of top here, you've got the on-off switch, you've got the USB sort of charging socket, and then you have something that originally I thought was just a 3.5 mini jack for headphones. But it turns out that this is actually a 2.5 jack, and this is purely for the TV connection cable. And you know, looking around the unit on the bottom, there is no headphone sort of socket. I think that's a real shame at any price level, especially, for example, you might be buying this maybe for your kids or your grandkids, you know, and you've got a sort of a car journey or something. Well, this could certainly keep them amused for maybe up to a couple of hours in the car, but without a headphone jack. The sort of menu noise and the game noise, although when you're playing it, it's interactive, it's part of the whole experience, but as a spectator, listen, it can get a little bit annoying. Now, one thing that again I'm a little bit sort of surprised about is when it comes to the volume control on the unit. I mean, it does have one, thank God. But I don't know if you can sort of see, if I get the camera to focus, it's very, very small. It's a tiny little wheel there. It does work, but you know, not quite sure why they sort of made that wheel so absolutely sort of small there. Sound quality itself, it's not bad. It's a little bit tinny, as you'd expect, but yeah, the sound's okay. I'll put the mic to it. So yeah, I think there's sort of, you know, I've noticed that some of the sounds on sort of some of the games, they don't quite match what they sort of, you know, used to do, if you can remember the games in the arcades and things. But yeah, overall, you know, for the money, I think it's fine. But I say, tiny little thing there you have to sort of do with your sort of thumbnail. Why they just couldn't make that just a little bit bigger, just a little bit more ergonomic, a bit like the missing headphone socket. Flipping the unit over. What is good is that it comes with a rechargeable battery. Now, battery life, it sort of doesn't really give you too much details on the website. Says about sort of 2 hours. I've got much longer than that. I've been playing this with the basically the sort of volume switched off because there's no headphone sort of jack on it, and yeah, I've got well over sort of 3 hours and it's still going. These little batteries, this one is a BL5C 3.7 volts. You can sort of pick these up really cheap actually on eBay. They're quite a generic battery. So yeah, it saves you having to put in sort of AA's, AAA's, which over time will probably cost you more than the unit. And also again, if you're going to buy this for the kids or the grandkids and you've got a bit of a journey, it might be worth maybe sort of picking up a couple of these off eBay before you go, and perhaps charging them up so that you've got a reserve. So, you know, that's about all I can say really. You know, for the money, I think the quality is absolutely fine. And yeah, I think it's time we sort of moved on to the games.
Struggled here to get some good quality video off the screen on the console. The refresh rate of the TFT and the shutter speed on my camera, they just didn't they didn't agree with each other, didn't line up. But so any lines or sort of moire effect that you see on this video is not on the screen itself. The screen itself is absolutely pin sharp. When we look at the screen here, you've got to consider what this thing cost. I paid just £12 delivered on Amazon Prime, and this handheld console is pretty much available on eBay for around about sort of £15-16 on average, probably about the same in dollars and euros. So you can't expect sort of too much. So I was very pleased with the quality of the screen. Yeah, it is a bit small, just over 2 inches. Some of the colours can be a little bit washed out on some of the games, but it is very sharp. It did come with a screen protector over the front of it, and I took that off straight away, and that helped things even more. What is also quite impressive is the speed at which these games play. These are obviously sort of emulations of the arcade games themselves, but they play really well. There's absolutely sort of no lag in the sort of controls, no sort of juddering on the video rendering. So the processor that's in this little sort of games console is actually really good. It's well up to the job. So yeah, I was very pleased with that. But, you know, as you can clearly see here, I just couldn't get past the sort of lines going across the screen. So I thought it was time that we connected it up to a larger TV using the supplied AV lead. Now this just plugs into the top of the unit, and it rather conveniently switches off the TFT screen, which will save you some sort of battery life. The lead itself has just got RCA connectors, so if your TV is really modern, it's got HDMI input only, it probably won't sort of work. Now one thing I was disappointed is the length of the lead. It's only approximately a metre length, so you can't really get that much away from the TV. You can't sort of get comfortable, sit on a chair, something like that. I think that's real penny pinching. Now as it is an RCA lead, it's possible that you might be able to get an extension lead if it was really cheap on eBay, and that might work. But yeah, that's a sort of bit of a shame because it worked really well once I plugged it into the TV. One thing you'll notice when you research these consoles is the quantity of games. Now, some advertise 300, even 500 games for your 15 quid. But what you're going to find is a lot of those games will be pretty much unplayable. You'll get a lot of fill-in games, which I'll sort of show you one in a moment. A lot of other ones will be very, very substandard sort of games. A lot of them will be repeated or sort of abbreviations on the same theme. But this console was quite refreshing. I mean, 168, you're probably not going to play all of those. There was one or two fill-ins, but in general, all of the classic sort of games are there. Sometimes they're under a different name because of the sort of copyright on the sort of ROM issue. But yeah, when you sort of flick through the menus, especially with that little sort of preview screen, you start finding all your classics, your sort of Mario, your Sonic, Space Invaders, sort of, you know, Defender, things like that, even some sort of racing games. It's really okay. But this racing game I'm showing here, this was a kind of like a sort of copy of Pole Position. It didn't really quite work. The colours were a little bit washed out and the sound wasn't sort of all that great. But I mean, for 12 quid you can't really moan. So an example of some fill-in games, generally these are sort of Chinese-based games. One or two might be playable, but it seems that the Chinese are rather like card games for some reason. So for us in the West, they're just complete sort of nonsense. Thankfully, there's only sort of just a few on this sort of console, and as I say, most of the games are really, really good. Certainly enough to keep you amused for, well, hours and hours really, if you sit down and go through them one by one. Conclusion, you know, if you're slightly older and you remember these sort of games in the 80s in the arcades, you're going to be absolutely like full of nostalgia. It's going to be a real sort of nostalgic kind of trip back in sort of time. And I think for younger kids as well, I think they'll be sort of quite interested in sort of seeing and playing some of these older games. I mean, the gameplay is quite hard. It's surprising when you go back, you don't realise how hard these games were. They might find that a little bit frustrating, but overall, very, very pleased with how these games play on this cheap console.
Right, okay, so we're going to bring this one to a close. As always, cheers. Thank you very much for tuning in to Fred in Your Shed. Your view time is always welcome. If you like the video, please give it the old thumbs up. That helps me. That helps the channel. And if you've not already done so, perhaps maybe consider giving me a sub. I'd really appreciate that as well. What I'm going to do is over on my sister channel, Fred in the Shed 2, I'm going to take this apart just for the hell of it, and we'll just have a look what's inside. I'm just interested to see how the games are stored on the unit itself, whether it's got a built-in sort of ROM chip in the actual machine, or it's using an SD card. Because if it's using an SD card, I might be able to slip that into my PC and perhaps read the ROMs, find out sort of a bit more information. So if you're interested, if you want to see what's inside it, I will leave a pop-up at the end over there. Click that and we'll take a look inside it and see what's cooking inside. But as for now, as always, cheers, thanks for tuning in, stay safe, and of course I'll catch you all on the next one.